The new neighbor. It started on a hot afternoon in June. I was sitting in my small living room, the air thick with silence. I lived alone, in a quiet neighborhood where nothing ever happened. Most days were the same. I would wake up, go to work, and come home. It wasn't exciting, but it was safe. That day, however, was different. I was flipping through a book when I heard a car stop outside. I looked out the window, expecting to see nothing, just the usual quiet. But this time, a car I didn't recognize was parked in front of the house next door. A man got out. He was tall, with dark hair and a black jacket. He didn't seem like the kind of person who would fit in here. The neighborhood was full of old families and quiet people. I watched him through the window, feeling curious. He didn't look at my house. He just walked inside the house next door. I hadn't seen anyone at that house in weeks. It was empty. I wondered who he was and why he had come. I didn't think much about it at first. I was used to strange things happening now and then, but the thought of him stayed with me. Something about the way he moved, the way he stepped out of the car, seemed off. Later that night, as I was eating dinner, I heard a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I slowly walked over and looked through the peephole. It was him. The man from next door. I opened the door a little. "Hello." He looked at me, his eyes sharp, his face serious. "Hi," he said. "I'm your new neighbor. My name is Tom. I just wanted to introduce myself." I smiled politely. "Nice to meet you, Tom. Welcome to the neighborhood." He nodded. But he didn't smile. His eyes stayed on me, watching me closely. "I hope you don't mind," he said, his voice low. "But I'm going to be here for a while. I hope we can get along." There was something strange in his voice. It was calm, but there was an edge to it, like he wasn't just talking about being neighbors. "Of course," I said, trying to sound friendly. "It's always good to have new neighbors." Tom didn't say anything more. He just gave a small nod and turned to leave. But before he walked away, he looked back at me. His eyes seemed darker now, almost cold. "Remember," he said softly, "nothing is ever what it seems." And then he was gone. I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty porch. What did he mean by that? I closed the door, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't just that he was strange. It was the way he said those words, like a warning, like he knew something I didn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Tom and the way he looked at me. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. But deep down, I knew something was off. And I couldn't stop wondering, why had he moved in? What was he really doing here? The next few days were quiet, but Tom's strange visit stayed with me. I kept glancing out my window, watching his house, wondering what he was doing in there. He kept to himself, never leaving or coming out much. But I noticed something. Every time I walked past my front window, I could see him staring out of his own window, watching me. At first, I told myself it was just a coincidence. He had probably been looking at something behind me. But it happened again. And again. It felt like he was always watching, always waiting for something. One afternoon, I decided to go for a walk to clear my mind. I told myself it was just paranoia. Maybe he was just a quiet guy. Nothing more. As I walked down the street, I saw Tom standing in his front yard. He wasn't looking at me, but something about the way he was standing, his hands in his pockets, gave me a bad feeling. I kept walking, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still watching me, even from behind. The next morning, I was getting ready for work when I heard a loud knock at my door. I was surprised to see Tom standing there again. "Morning," he said, his face still serious. "I need a favor." I frowned. "A favor?" He looked around, his eyes scanning the street before focusing back on me. "I lost my keys. I thought maybe I could borrow yours. Just for a little while. I'll bring them back." I wasn't sure what to say. I didn't know this man, and I didn't want to give him my keys. But there was something about the way he asked. He didn't seem angry, but there was an urgency in his voice. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to sound polite. "But I can't do that. I don't even know you." He nodded, but his eyes never left mine. There was a pause, like he was thinking. "You'll regret it," he said softly, almost like he was talking to himself. But I heard him. Everything's connected. Before I could respond, he turned and walked away, disappearing back into his house. I stood there, staring at the empty space where he had been, my heart pounding. What did he mean by that? That afternoon, I decided to visit the local library. Maybe I could find something about Tom, something that would explain his strange behavior. The librarian was an older woman, always quiet and watchful. I asked her if she knew anything about the man who had moved into the house next door. She looked at me for a long moment before she spoke. "You should be careful about him," she said, her voice low. "People like him, they don't come to town for no reason." I felt my stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" The librarian hesitated, then leaned in closer. "There's a history here. You should leave it alone." Her warning only made me more curious. What history? What was she talking about? That night, I couldn't sleep again. My mind kept racing with questions. I couldn't ignore the feeling that Tom wasn't just some quiet neighbor. There was something hidden in his past. Something dark. And I had a horrible feeling that I was going to find out exactly what that was. The next day, I couldn't shake the librarian's words from my mind. People like him, they don't come to town for no reason. What did she mean by that? And why did she look so scared when she spoke? I needed answers. After work, I walked down to the library again. The librarian wasn't there, but the woman who worked the front desk looked up from her book when I walked in. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice kind but distracted. "I'm looking for information on a man. His name is Tom. He just moved into the house next door." She raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything right away. She grabbed a thick, old book off the shelf and handed it to me. "This might help," she said softly. "It's about the history of the town. If you're looking for something strange, it's in there." I opened the book, and the pages were filled with names, dates, and old photographs. The town had a long history, but it didn't take long for me to find something that stood out. It was a story from decades ago, about a man who had come to the town under mysterious circumstances. The man's name was Tom too, and the story said he was connected to something dangerous, something that had happened in the town long ago. As I read, my hands started to shake. The story mentioned strange disappearances, rumors of dark rituals, and warnings from people who had been too close to the truth. The more I read, the clearer it became. The Tom who had moved in next door wasn't just any man. He was part of a much bigger, much darker story. I quickly closed the book and left the library, my head spinning. I needed to know more, but I didn't know where to go. I was scared of what I might find, scared of what Tom might be hiding. When I got home, I saw Tom standing outside again, just like before. But this time, he wasn't just standing there. He was looking right at me. His eyes were cold, calculating. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he spoke, his voice low but clear. "I know what you're doing," he said. I froze. "What do you mean?" "You've been asking questions," he said. "You shouldn't have done that. You'll regret it." He didn't smile. His expression was serious, almost threatening. But there was something else in his eyes, something that made my blood run cold. It was fear. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What do you want?" Tom didn't answer. Instead, he turned away and started walking back to his house. But as he did, he glanced over his shoulder and said, "Don't say I didn't warn you." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what I'd read in the library. Tom's past, the strange disappearances, the dark things he was connected to, it was all too much. And as much as I wanted to ignore it, I knew one thing for sure: Tom wasn't who he said he was. The real question was, what was he hiding? I couldn't ignore it anymore. The truth was there, buried deep in the town's history, and it was clear Tom was at the center of it all. I had to face him, to ask him everything I needed to know. I had already crossed the line by digging into his past, but I had no choice now. My curiosity and my fear were too strong. The next morning, I decided to confront him. I wasn't sure what I expected to find, but I knew I had to face whatever was coming. When I reached Tom's house, I knocked firmly on the door. It opened after a few moments, and there he stood, staring at me, his face unreadable. "What do you want?" he asked, his tone calm but cold. "I need to know what you're hiding," I said. "I've seen the history, Tom. I know about the disappearances, the rituals, and I know you're part of it." Tom's eyes flashed with something: anger, fear. I couldn't tell. But he didn't back away. Instead, he stepped forward, his voice low and serious. "You shouldn't have looked," he said. "Now you're part of it, too." I took a deep breath. "I don't understand." "What do you mean? What do you want from me?" He sighed, rubbing his face with one hand. "I didn't want you involved in this. But now that you've seen the truth, you can't walk away. It's too late." I stepped closer, not wanting to show how scared I felt. "What is too late? What do you mean by that?" Tom hesitated for a long moment. Then, his eyes softened, just slightly. "There's a curse. A dark force that's been in this town for years. It's been waiting, and it's tied to me. To my family. I was sent here to stop it, to break the curse. But now that you know too much," he trailed off, the fear in his voice rising. "Wait, you're telling me you're here to stop something?" I asked, confused. He nodded slowly. "Yes, but you don't understand. It's already too far gone. The curse won't let me leave. And now, it wants you." I stepped back, my heart pounding in my chest. "Me? Why me?" Tom looked at me, his face full of regret. "Because you're connected to this place. You don't even know it, but you are. And the curse, it feeds on fear, on curiosity. It wants to take you, just like it has taken others. I felt my stomach twist. I could see the truth in his eyes. Tom wasn't lying. Something dark, something powerful, was here in this town. And I had unknowingly walked straight into its trap. I turned to leave, but Tom grabbed my arm. "If you run, it'll be worse. You can't escape." I shook my head, tears welling up in my eyes. "What do I do?" He let go of my arm, his face hardening. "I can't stop it alone. But if you want to survive, you have to help me find the key. The key that will break the curse for good." I looked at him, confused. "The key? What key?" Tom didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked inside his house, leaving me standing there, alone and terrified. I didn't know if I had a choice anymore. I had to face whatever was coming. I had to find the key. And I had to stop the curse, even if it meant risking everything. But deep down, I knew one thing. Whatever was waiting for me in the shadows of this town was worse than anything I had ever imagined.